over, there we go, turn this over to Deenaalee in just a second, but for all of you who just joined, hello again, I'm Jen Gurecki, I'm the CEO of Coalition Snow, and I have been looking forward to this event for all winter long, and I want to thank, we have so many incredible people who are going to be speaking to us today, and I just have a feeling that this conversation is going to be really powerful and really informative. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time to be here. One of the ways that we all came together is that last year, Deenaalee and I had chatted about starting an Indigenous Backcountry Scholarship as a way to be able to increase access to backcountry skiing and snowboarding among Indigenous people. And Deenaalee is an ambassador for Coalition Snow, and when I talked about this, they said yes, and we did it immediately, kind of like rolled it out in 24 hours, which is, I'm kind of known for just doing things like that. And they had patience with me through it, and we were able to do some various events and kind of put some money aside to be able to welcome the first cohort of recipients of the Indigenous Backcountry Scholarship, and most of them are here tonight. So we have an incredible group of people, and I'm actually going to have Deenaalee and each person introduce themselves. I'm going to be hitting mute on myself. I recommend that everybody else do that, and I'll be here to facilitate. If anyone has, I'll keep an eye on questions. I can help if anything comes up, but I'm going to pass it on to Deenaalee now, and thank you everyone for being here tonight.
Adet and Hashikadistan Jen, thank you so much for hosting us today and for bringing us into this space. Deenaalee Hodgdon Se'ezret. My name is Deenaalee Hodgdon. My family is from the lower Yukon River, from a village called Git'ran, otherwise known as Anvik, and the village of Inuqiaq, otherwise known as South Naknek, out in Bristol Bay, which some of you might know as the world's last sockeye salmon fishery. Yeah, I'm super excited to be welcoming you all into this space, and a huge thank you, huge Hashikadistan Koyana to Coalition Snow for hosting this. We're super excited. Today we have not only 4 of our recipients of the first Indigenous Backcountry Scholarship with us. We have Kimberly and Geneva and Nahanni and Catherine here. We also have 4 of the folks that helped to make the selection. It was really difficult. I think all of us maybe cried a little bit during the selection process, but I also want to welcome Hannah, Micheli, Ellen, and yeah, I think that's, Hannah, Micheli, Ellen. Yep. Okay. Making sure I wasn't missing anybody from our selection crew. We also had another person, Sarah, that wasn't able to make it from our selection committee, and Bon as well, who is, I think, on a flight right now. And so hopefully next time they'll be able to join us. But I'm going to hand it over. Let's have the selection crew go first, and then we'd love to introduce our recipients. So I will turn it over to Ellen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ellen Bradley. I go with she, her pronouns. I'm currently residing on Tulalip territory, or what is known as Everett, Washington. I am a skier. I ski for Natives Outdoors, Deuter, and Protect Our Winters. I'm a Crystal Mountain ambassador, and I'm also an Arctic climate scientist. So I try to reach the realms of both worlds of science and skiing. I'll pass it over to Micheli.
Thanks, Ellen. Oki Niitsítapi Nitaniko, Micheli Oliver, Niitsítapi Blackfeet. I'm also descended from the absentee Shawnee peoples, and I am mixed European, Irish, and Italian. Today I'm coming to you from the unceded territories of the Cheyenne, Ute, and Arapaho peoples. I'm an activist, a journalist, photographer, and stepping into being a filmmaker. And I will pass it over to Hannah.
Hey there, I'm Hannah Corral. I born and raised on lower Deenaalee Hodgdon lands in Alaska. I'm also mixed Irish Italian, and my father's people came from the Ita indigenous folks from the Philippines. I'm just an old school ski bum who works in the tourism industry with skiing in Alaska. And who else? I think Deenaalee, it's your turn.
Yeah, let's pass it on to our recipients. So Geneva, I'll pass the mic to you.
Thanks, Deenaalee. Bojo, Geneva Indigenous, Potawatomi, and Central Oregon and Sugpiaq. So hello, everyone. Welcome. My name's Geneva. I'm Potawatomi, which is out originally from the Great Lakes, but now we're in Oklahoma. But I currently reside in the ancestral lands of the Northern Paiute, the Wasco, and the Warm Springs, which is now known as Bend, Oregon. I'm an environmental educator, as well as just a 4 seasons athlete, always doing something outside, skiing, biking, trail running, just making friends outside. I guess I'll pass it on. I'm gonna send it to my Potawatomi sister over there, Catherine.
Osho, Catherine Dishkanas. Hi, I'm Catherine Jager. I'm Latina, citizen Potawatomi, and I'm German descent. I'm currently an educator, and I am on Adfality, Kalapuya, Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde land. And shout out to my sister for being here. Thanks, sis. And then I'm going to give it to Kimberly.
There we go. Hi, I'm Kimberly Ayek. I am Inuqiaq and Sugpiaq. My father's family is originally from King Island. My mom's family is originally from Chignik area. I'm currently in the, I guess, the Takatnu or the Upper Cook Inlet right now. I'm in Wasilla, or traditionally the lands of the Deenaalee people. But yeah, let's see here. Who else? I'm trying to figure out this Zoom. Let's see.
We got Nahanni left.
Nahanni. Pass it on.
Hey everyone. Hey, Abawastich. My name's Nahanni McKay. I am Métis Cree. My family's from the Red River settlement in Manitoba, kind of found their way through Saskatchewan and down here in the Canadian Rockies now on Treaty 7 territory, home of the Blackfoot, Stoney and Tsuut'ina nations. And now it's called Banff. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I'm an artist. I'm also a freestyle skiing coach, and I am very happy to be among all of you.
Woohoo! I love hearing all of your introductions. You know, I don't know if Jen's feeling this too, and Micheli and Ellen and everybody that's been part of this since like day one. But you know, Jen asked us to come on to do Backcountry Beta, Micheli and I, last year, and to just see like the growth in this group, and to have each of you that might have been involved last year in that first Backcountry Beta now joining us today. You know, it's exciting, and I think it really shows a turn in the industry, a turn in the conversations that are happening here and across Turtle Island. And that's kind of what we're here to do today, is to kind of bring that discussion along a little bit more, kind of learn more about each other. This is really our first event that we're doing as a coalition, as a group together. And so you're going to be learning alongside us as we learn about each other. So I want to kick it off right now. We decided to just do kind of a roundtable discussion. So everybody that's part of our crew, feel free to hop in here and answer as you see fit. But I wanted to kick it off by just asking, you know, what really sparked your interest in backcountry skiing? You know, it's a very specific form of being on the snow and being out on the land, and it's different than being in the resorts. So if anybody would like to kick us off, feel free to hop in. Yeah, Nahanni.
I can start. I started skiing when I was 2, and I think having the privilege to grow up in this beautiful mountain town, I got into skiing from my parents, namely my dad, who's one of the few Indigenous ACMG mountain guides. I think he said there's like 2 of them, which is kind of wild to me. So, and yeah, and I think just being in the backcountry, there's like no rules and no one to tell you what, like, if you're good, if you're not. And that's what I loved about it.
Yeah, it's really amazing to be one of two. I'd be really curious to hear his story too, and maybe we'll have a intergenerational discussion at some point. Next Backcountry Beta Series. Let's see, Hannah, I'd like to pass the mic over to you and kind of hear about your experience, and then maybe Kimberly and Micheli.
All right. Let's see, when did I start skiing? I started skiing when I was 2 as well, through my parents back in the day when it was mostly just sweatpants and cotton socks and 3-pin bindings. My skiing background is mostly from transportation sort of perspective, and then I went on to being a cross-country ski racer and Olympic training things and whatnot, and was expected to ski in college. And I was definitely one of 2 brown folks in the cross-country ski world. And I was on a training, interval training, and I was just staring out into the mountains, and I decided that I just couldn't go down that road anymore. There was too much commercialism and too much focus on speed and status. So I slowed down, and I haven't left the mountain since. Traded in competition for observation and sharing experiences. So that's how I got into it.
See if I can, there we go, lower hands. Kim again. How I got kind of introduced and to backcountry is, I started skiing in snowboarding in elementary school. And then, like my education right now, my career path is in the outdoor industry. And it is just kind of like a natural progression, I feel like, for a lot of people to go from like kind of this with inbounds to exploring out of bounds and kind of pushing yourself and expanding your I guess just your experience. But what I think I like most, I guess, about backcountry is it's just like a slower pace, right? It's not about, let's see how many laps we can do, and right, like I want to hit this jump over and over. It's just like you just get to enjoy the moment and be present, versus like, you're overstimulated with other people on the chairlift or seeing who can outdo who, right? But there's just like a calmer sense, right, of being out in the mountains. Thanks.
Awesome. I'll go next. I mean, similar to what some folks have said, I started skiing downhill at the resort when I was really little. I grew up in Colorado, so I was skiing. We got like free passes. Colorado really set up kind of like the Front Range area to make it a little bit more easier for kids to ski. So we had like free 5th grade season passes, and my dad's dad had really, like, my grandfather really liked skiing. He really enjoyed kind of the joy that it brought, and that was important to my dad. And so, similar story, like lots of Carhartt jackets and hand-me-downs and all of that stuff we put together and got out on the slopes. And then I gradually kind of stepped away from skiing for a while as it got more expensive in my high school years. And I stopped skiing, I think, for about 6 years. And then I got back into it again when I started going to the University of Colorado. And that was, again, like stepping into kind of this like ski community where I had tons of friends who were going up on the weekends. And then it was, again, friends were telling me about backcountry skiing, and just echoing Kimberly's sentiment. I love the slow movement and the kind of like just beautiful walking through the snow. And I was mind blown. And I've always been really overwhelmed by like the weird posh fashion kind of ski resort strangeness where if you aren't wearing the right thing, you are not cool. And it almost just seemed like this fashion show you'd show up to. And I could never quite fit. But when I was in the backcountry with my best friends, as long as we were being safe, it was like we always fit wherever we were. And it was very much so like this calm observation. But for me, I really had to have a specific reason for being a backcountry skier. So I actually got a internship as a snow hydrology intern. And that was really like how I was justified buying the gear and was able to kind of really step into backcountry skiing was through this internship. And that plus my friends at CU, that was what really brought me into backcountry skiing.
I'll go next. Lower my hand. Yeah, same with a lot of people that they said. I started skiing as a kid. I grew up in that like Everett, Washington area, so lots of access to skiing. But skiing was always for me growing up, and especially in my high school years, like how I felt my most Indigenous. I grew up away from my traditional homelands, but still really connected to my culture. My aunts and my dad and through my family have always made sure that was really important to us, but we didn't spend a lot of time on our own homelands. So skiing was always how I felt connected to the place that I'm in now and reconciled those feelings that I have of being a guest on other people's lands, feeling disconnected from my own homelands, and just trying to figure out how to be connected with Creator and with the natural world that we live in. And so I was mostly a resort skier until my senior year of college. And I went and visited one of my housemates that lived in Colorado, and they had an extra set of backcountry gear, and they just pulled me up on the hill with them one day and just said, we're going to do this. And I had no education. I didn't know how to use a beacon. It was probably incredibly unsafe that they pulled me out in this way, especially in the middle of the season in Colorado. But it ended up being what made me fall in love with backcountry skiing, was just this accessibility that felt different, this ability to slow down and move with the landscape, this ability to make a relationship with a place that didn't feel like the same way it feels when you're resort skiing. Like there weren't a ton of people around, and the conversations we were having were more related to what the snow looked like and the land looked like that day, and what we were learning from the land on whether or not it was safe to be where we were. But it's something that I really put a lot of thought into recently, was the fact that I had to be brought into backcountry skiing, that it wasn't something I had access to within my own family or even the communities I grew up skiing with, even though I'd been skiing since I was a kid, that it took someone I lived with who happened to be a white woman who comes from an incredibly privileged and very rich family to bring me into this sport, and has really changed my life.
Yeah, Catherine or Geneva, do you want to hop in here at all? You can also move to the next question.
Sure. Yeah, I can hop in. Yeah, I have kind of a similar story, I would say, to Micheli and Ellen. I grew up resort skiing, but then kind of lost it in high school when I moved to Reno, which like now I kick myself up because like there's great skiing there. How did I not keep skiing? Mostly because of cost. But then when I went to college at Gonzaga, shout out Ellen and Anna, I see you. I got back into it because I just like needed to do something in the winter to connect with the land. I'm a big runner and I hate running in the winter. And so I needed something. And I saw this group of guys, one of them being my boyfriend at the time, and they were doing this like uphill skiing thing. So I borrowed a pair of my dad's old tele skis, 188s. I'm 5'6". They were so long. It was aggressive. And hadn't skied in like 6 years, and just like got after it and just like chased this freaking guys club, which I kind of hated, but I am thankful that, yeah, it was really hard. Thankful that they at least brought me out there, and then through that found some women, and that really like changed the game for me, because while I can like be thankful that the guys started it, like it was the women that made me fall in love with it, because they created this awesome safe space to learn and to have some really awesome discussions about the land that we were on. And I got to learn so much just about them and like how they've learned about backcountry skiing. And I think for me, like, it's the community and it's like the making connections with people that is like by far the part that I fall in love with backcountry skiing.
I don't have too much to add, but I think what I've found, again, I never owned a backcountry set until this scholarship. And so I'm so appreciative. And it was so exciting because I follow a lot of these people that are here, and then to have that opportunity. And then I just recently went out, I'm from where Geneva's from, and for the first time, like to grow up in a ski town and the first time backcountrying and always hearing about it, but never going. And just that time that you get to talk with people and like actually have space and just to enjoy. I mean, it was such a different feeling than resort skiing and just such a different sense of community. And already I've got to meet people and go skiing with people. And there's no pressure in the same way, which has been really nice. Just like you are what you bring. And I think it's been so cool to watch all these videos of other people and just feel that.
Yeah, I'll hop in here with my response, and then we'll take, if anybody has any questions, we'll take one question from the audience after. So get your typers ready or get ready to hop on screen. I was first introduced to backcountry skiing. I was introduced to skiing when I was very young, but I had to take a hiatus as well just because of accessibility. I grew up on a small little mountain here in Lower Tanana Dené lands in Fairbanks called Moose Mountain, which is probably one of the only places in across Turtle Island that instead of a chairlift, you have a school bus that brings you up the mountain, because you're usually like in -20 below, which I loved. I didn't realize that, chairlifts were a thing until I got exposed to Alyeska much later on. But I didn't really know what backcountry skiing was until maybe I was 22 or so. And my partner at the time, who had grown up in Nederland, Colorado, skied in on Caribou Mountain all the time there. And I was able to accompany him one day on a pair of snowshoes and, trudged up right behind him. And then as he was bounding down the mountain, I was just trying to go as fast as I possibly could on a pair of snowshoes. And I'm like, I want to do that. That looks great. And yet really, again, struggled. I was, in college at the time and really struggled with just the barriers to entry into the sport. And so, I mean, I'm very, very new to backcountry skiing. I mean, my first time like on a pair of backcountry skis was on Connor Ryan's old pair of Nomads that were hella heavy. And I was also in a pair of like Nordica resort boots, trailing behind like Micheli and all these like Patagonia athletes. And I'm like, okay, we're just gonna do this thing at Taos. I was definitely a little sore after that, but it got me hooked because it was so much fun. And like many of my friends here said, like you could take that time in that space and really just be outside, and not have the crazy, $30 here in Fairbanks to, I've heard like a pass at Vail or something is like around $200 and something. That's ridiculous. That's just crazy. And so I really love the idea of backcountry skiing because it frees up the accessibility to land. And then you get into really interesting conversations around land management and property in the United States. And that's one of my fortes, which maybe we'll dive a little bit deeper into. Oh, hey, Connor, I see the chat. So I want to turn now to just kind of this, we had a little pre-chat beforehand, and if there's no questions from the audience, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. We will go on to our next question, which is, how do you approach a day on the mountain or being out on the land, whether that is, on your skis or in some of these other types of activities that we do out on the land? Like what makes it Indigenous?
I guess I can hop on. I think that, and I'm sure there are many, especially mountain towns, that people can share the sentiment, but Bend specifically feels very competitive, and it's something I've noticed my whole life and always felt pretty like alienated by in like outdoor spaces because I never got it. And it's like, why is everyone in a rush? Why are we trying to get to the top of this mountain? Like, why are we not like enjoying it on the way? And I later realized after meeting more Native people in outdoor spaces that, oh, it's not me that has a problem. It's this colonizer idea of conquering the land, bagging peaks, getting these like times on Strava that we have to post about, and just this like idea of competition and like conquering. That's something that like I've never really understood. And so for me, to like meet other Native people in outdoor spaces that share that sentiment really made me realize like, oh, this is like how I see the land. Like this is just something that I've been born with, that is like my intuition, that I just know that it's never been about the race. It's never been about getting to the top of the mountain. It's about what are the lessons that the land is going to teach me today? And what am I going to take home with this? So that's kind of my approach.
I'll hop on and kind of echo a little bit what Geneva was talking about with my time in the mountains in the backcountry. When I approach it, is I look at absolutely everything on the land that we're seeing as being a relative of its own, with its own spirit and value. And I approach backcountry skiing by trying to listen to all of those relatives and what they may be telling me. And in a lot of ways, I think that makes me a better backcountry skier than a lot of people that don't have that kind of relationship to the land, because I give inherent value and respect to the signs that I am being told, and don't hold that colonizer value that Geneva was talking about of like trying to conquer things or like working through weather conditions or avalanche conditions that you should not be working through. So I think I have a very similar look at it as Geneva.
I got a little anecdotal story to add on to that. Years ago, I was skiing in Juneau in the mountains, and that area is very wet. And a bunch of people and I had gone up pretty much from town, and there was about 9 of us. And long story short, we hiked up through the rainforest up into the high country, and as soon as we got out of the forest into a large face, it was clear that the avalanche danger was super high. And this was before there was any internet conditions you could check on, or even anything like that. And it was basically what happened was there was a fella there who was leading the group with his ego mostly, and it resulted in someone dying in an avalanche. And it sparked a lot of conversation wherein essentially when I was with these folks, there were 4 women, and I watched most of their fears and opinions be silenced by this one person who was essentially very ego driven on the trip. And it was one of many eye-opening things for me in the backcountry. And really, to answer the question, how do you approach the land, is I think it's really important to go off on what you guys were saying, to look at the land as your teacher and to listen to your ancestors and your intuition more specifically, because when you are on the land and you're listening to the wind and paying attention to the direction, you're feeling the humidity in the air, you're listening to the whomping of things, of the snowpack, you're paying attention to your surroundings, that all ties into your intuition to tell you when to go and when to stop, or to have this conversation with your group, and to encourage having a sense of self in the land by the teaching of the land, so that you are safe and you're not putting other people in danger. And I've definitely see over my years of being in the backcountry, a lot of really bad stuff going down and people being in really tough and dangerous situations because they had that colonizer mentality and wanted to just go hard and, you know, ignore the what other people had to say. And it really has to do with trust in your surroundings, trust within yourself, and trust with your group. And I think that's one of the things I love about this group is talking about these Indigenous perspectives that we can teach non-Indigenous folks and, you know, the rest of the ski community and the ski industry, because from what I've seen in my lifetime of skiing and whitewater kayaking and hiking and all these other things, it really has been a major lack. And it's caused a lot of, you know, inner turmoil and, you know, emotional trauma and death and all kinds of stuff, which is, you know, not what we want. So I guess to sum it up, you know, respect for the land thus gives you a better sense of yourself and your community and to how to take care of each other when you're out there.
That was really awesome, Hannah, and yeah, I want to echo that a little bit with kind of a story of my own from my childhood. Growing up, my dad always would say, "Trust your gut, kid," and that was like just over and over and over again was the lesson. You know, what does it mean to trust your gut? And in my adult years, I started realizing that yeah, you get these gut feelings, these intuitions, but a lot of times that's like allowing your emotions into spaces. And so for me to indigenize backcountry skiing is to allow space for those emotions. You know, I think we've all experienced those days where we have a friend or our personal selves or whoever it is where they're just in a horrible mood and they are not having a day and they just have a bad feeling about the ski, about whatever it is. And to indigenize is to not have like your eyes set on the prize so much that you ignore what someone may be going through in that space, and being able to like allow, you know, hey, we maybe don't have to go to the top of that peak today. Let's just go sledding, or let's not go skiing at all. And kind of allowing those emotions to speak volumes, and your gut feelings and your intuition to have like a say just as much as science would, you know, Western science would in that space. And then another aspect of indigenizing backcountry skiing for me is really remembering that the land doesn't owe me anything. You know, it's a teacher, it's a space where I go to learn, and it has so much to give, but it doesn't owe me anything. And just like taking that ego of somehow this space owes you something, and realizing that there's also no such thing as ownership, you know, in that same mentality of the land doesn't owe you anything. It's you also don't own the land, you don't own the peak, it's not yours to get. It's Mother Nature, it's the creator, it's there's no ownership in that space. So that's how it's funny, my indigenizing of backcountry skiing sometimes is just not backcountry skiing at all, and listening to your gut in that way. So that's my way.
Yeah, Nahanni, I see your hand up too. You want to hop in there?
Yeah, I think we all have the same mentality of like taking in and learning from the land, and definitely with Geneva, like also I grew up in a mountain town, and it is a colonial tactic to like conquer a mountain. Like I've never, like people didn't start recording first ascents and summits until colonial times, and it's hard to say who was really on top of this mountain, and does it even matter? And to share a story, I did the Wapta Traverse out here on the Icefields Parkway a while ago, and with me and my dad, and it was 80-kilometer winds, and we turned back, but the group we were with was going to go anyway. And that's about listening to your gut. And I think the best avalanche report, mostly detailed, I'll quote it here, was the mountains don't care how prepared you are, and they don't care about your level of training. And it's all about listening to yourself and listening to the wind and listening to like what is in nature. And I think that's what I have learned. And growing up here, I've been always awkwardly Indigenous. I don't know if that's like a word, like, like I was always scared to say so just because I am so white. And I grew up in a very, very, very white town. Shout out to Jenny May, who's here also, who grew up in Banff with me. And it's definitely different, and like kind of recognizing myself and being amongst this group. I'm so much more comfortable with myself and to take these lessons into the backcountry as well.
I don't have too much to add on to it, like everything, you know, that everyone's saying. And, you know, I'm like, oh, yeah. Like totally identify with that, you know, but like, I think when, you know, when I'm spending time outside, like the only way for me to gather more knowledge and like, you know, kind of so this like relationship with nature and like, you know, is to spend the time out. And like, you know, I just being able to even have like my little plant finder and be like, okay, what is this? And like, what's the traditional name? You know, and what kind of medicinal value, you know, properties does it have? You know, but it's like, you know, I think of like my father, right, who has a very limited westernized education, but his knowledge of the land is just so, like, it's just immense, right? And the only way that he's, you know, like he has a relationship with the land where, you know, he has spent his whole life out on the land, right? And that's like the only way, right, that the nature is like my teacher, and the only way that I can like grow it is by spending the time out. And so yeah, just having that approach of what lesson do I need to learn today, right? And yeah, that's what I got. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I really appreciate the reflections of intuition and preparedness and thinking about, you know, who's on your team that's and that you're being out on the land with, that is in touch with themselves enough to be in touch with the land as well, and just with that connection. Sorry about that. It reminds me a lot of, you know, we're getting ready for trapping season up here, like beaver trapping. And I just asked one of my close friends if he would be my beaver trapping partner. And, you know, that's a relationship that traditionally was very much nurtured, because you realize that when you're out on the land and it's, you know, below freezing, you got to have somebody that can know their stuff and can know their stuff enough to like get you out of a precarious situation. And I feel like it's something that's very similar as well when you're out on the mountain, regardless of how big your group is. And then also the importance of self-rescue as well. You know, as we are moving along in this conversation, we have about 15 minutes left. And so again, feel free to put questions in the chat, and I want to just discuss a little bit more with you all. Sorry about my pups in the background. They're being mischief right now.
Can I go ahead? Sorry to interrupt. Can I go ahead and ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Okay, instead of putting in the chat, as my sister laughs at me. So bonjour, Maribeth, Dejnakas, Shoreline Deutschbia, Potawatomi, Nadao, también yo soy Latina, and I'm also of German descent. So I really enjoyed this conversation. I also grew up in Bend, Oregon, but now in the Seattle area. And having grown up in a resort town it's interesting, to say the least. But so you all talked about your relationship with the land, which I think is fantastic, but how does that work with the people who are there? That's something I've been thinking a lot about, especially with tourism, is how does that relationship when you're on, if it's your own people or you're Indigenous, because we do talk about these land acknowledgements and the importance of them, but they're hollow if you're not doing something. I think they're hollow if you don't do something back to them. So I was thinking, like, here in the Seattle area, you have like real rent that you can pay to the Duwamish peoples. Have you thought of ways to do that on whose lands that you backcountry ski on?
I have a quick thing for that. If I own a small tourism company here on the Lower Tana Dené lands, and something Deenaalee is also helping me. I've contacted quite a few people to come help and talk from an Indigenous perspective about how they've seen tourism change and the people who have come here and things like that, and to essentially hold these workshops to have a platform for Indigenous people to come and talk to non-Indigenous folks on the land who are skiers and recreation folks, and to start having that conversation on a local level. These are the people who are buying the ski boots from the shop downtown and who are bringing their folks in and their cousins and their whomever, and having Airbnbs that are being full of visitors and stuff like that. And so I feel like the more that, at least for my business, a local tourist business, tourism business, to start shaping that perspective and that conversation with the public, and to include Indigenous folks who have seen through the ages how the land and the perspectives have changed is an important goal. Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah, no, that does. It's I guess this goes along because as I grew up in Bend, I was born and grew up in Bend, and like as you watch tourism change, and also I actually work with Indigenous people and governance issues, and like how do you do that with tourism and whatnot, and like backcountry skiing is a big one, or skiing in general. And so that was just, yeah, my question is like, how do you also give back, not just the land, but which is also very important, but also the people's lands that you are on?
I don't know if you want to hear my answer since we talk all the time.
Yeah, yes, I would love to hear your answer, Catherine.
I think one thing I know, I also had to unpack so much from Ben and the elitism that I had also adopted, and I had to get told, dude, like, it's okay not to have perfect equipment. And I think one thing, I know Geneva and I are doing a cross-country ski clinic in Bend, and I'll just be bold, instead of paying trail fees, we're going to pay it to the tribe, right? And so it's that action. And I think it was it Indigenous woman that hiked, Jolene and Taz, like that whole crew that did that on the Numupoyo, right? Or I think I mispronounced that, right? And that and education and why we're doing that. And so I think that's one way that we'll see how it goes. I'll let you know.
Yeah, I think like that
as well.
No worries, mine's short, really quick. I just think like something, it's really, really important to like have these ideas of reparations and like always know that reparations like can be made. But I think something I want to point out too is every single tribe is very different. And so a lot of times like we can't have this like generalized idea of, oh, we can donate this money and like do this thing and it'll work for every single tribe. I think it's important to keep in mind, like oftentimes like what tribes need, like you can ask, and maybe you don't know who to reach out to or yada yada, but like now you know all of us and we're connected in different spaces in the United States. And so maybe asking questions of like, what is this individual like tribe needing? And I think like listening and learning and like following like tribal Instagram accounts or going to websites or that kind of thing, like doing your own research. And obviously like, all of us, we can't do like unpaid labor. And so sometimes there isn't space for that. But at the end of the day, it's making sure that we ask questions and not assuming that every single tribe will have the same exact solution needed or will need money or whatever else it is. It's asking questions and listening and doing research.
Yeah, I really like Micheli's answer on that. And I think in another sense, as like you can't sum it down for like a generalization of all Indigenous people, the one thing I think that you could generalize and put into 2 words is land back. And I think that is the stepping stone of like what you fill your land acknowledgement with. And obviously as individuals, you may not have the power to do whatever land back is for you in the places that you live, but you have the power to encourage that or to sign the stupid petitions or to pay your rent to the Duwamish tribe. Like all of these are steps towards land back. And I think that is the ultimate like goal and direction in which all of these actions are headed towards by making a land acknowledgement.
Deenaalee, I have a question. If unless you want to get to the next one you have.
Go
I
for
don't
it,
see
Dan.
her. So this conversation right now about land back is making me think about, there's since Connor's name has come up a few times, I'm assuming you're around there. Hi, Connor. So in Connor's film, Spirit of the Peaks, if anyone hasn't seen that, I highly recommend watching it. There's a part of it toward the end that gets into how the Ute tribe was forcibly removed from Colorado, blaming them for essentially creating fires. And really it was around so people could, so that white people could mine gold. And then it shifts in the film to this section about, well, they may not be mining gold anymore, but there's a different form of gold in Colorado, and it's white gold, and it's tourism, right? And I, here with a friend, and we were having this conversation last night about, like, imagine how different this, the United States of America, even North America, would be if Indigenous people still own that land. But that's not who owns the ski resorts and owns all this land. And I don't know if I so much have a question as much as if anybody would like to speak more to that, sort of like the possibilities of what could be if Indigenous people owned this land that is so rich in resources and creating incredible amounts of wealth for people, white people.
I don't want to take too much space because I know I've talked a lot and I really want to make sure everybody gets like equitable space to speak. First of all, Indigenous peoples would never own land, period. I just don't think that would really, I think we have to, and I think we I know a lot of tribes are now owning land, and I have heard of, but ideally, every single tribe that I've talked to and Indigenous person that I've had conversations with, the goal would not be to own the land. So I think that's the first one. And as far as envisioning a better future, I think it's the idea about what does it mean to work with a space and be intermingled and with a space versus being on a space and providing that. And I think something that that I've really been fascinated about, and I've done a lot of research on Indigenous fire practices and sacred fire practice, and the idea that I really want to get across to folks is just how almost contrived it has been in our society, in this world, where we have had these massive campaigns in Western society to directly get humans away from land, right? It's the Utes must go, in Connor's film, it's been Smokey Bear, it's been all of these campaigns that have directly villainized human relationship with the land, and thus villainizing Indigenous peoples in that same grouping, right? And so the idea of even just owning a space or being in a space is really interesting, because I think obviously if Native people had kept our relationships with our homelands, then we wouldn't be in a lot of the chaos that we're in today with our environment. But in general, it would be this perception of what it means to be in a relationship with this space would be different. And we wouldn't have had these campaigns, these massive campaigns that have directly removed what it is to be a human on the land, because capitalism, right? You think about Smokey Bear, right? Smokey Bear was a campaign that was launched so that Indigenous peoples would not be able to have a relationship with the land, so that timber and lumber companies could extract and make money, right? So it's this entire campaign that has changed our perception of a space that we're not in relationship with, so that big companies can make money from that space. I'll pass it off to whoever's next.
I don't want to put Deenaalee on the spot or anything, but I know that, she did mention, or Deenaalee mentioned, just they're passionate about, land management and things like that. I do, just real quick, I think it has a lot to do with the word respect. Tourism is a huge industry that goes to essentially comes and it like visits other people's homes of the animals, homes of the people who've been there forever. I mean, in Alaska, the term wilderness is thrown around every day, all day long. And it builds a sense that nobody has ever been there before. And I mean, we have dog mushing in Alaska that is predominantly completely white, and every day, I think no one is even acknowledging that, not even just acknowledging, but questioning and having other conversations, and like not supporting this idea that, you know, they were the first ones to do it. And it's, yeah, I always think about the word respect, and I think tourism could really benefit from just internalizing that word a lot more. That's it.
Yeah, I can hop in here. Sorry, I have one puppy that's choking a little bit and another puppy that was just trying to poop on the floor. So I'm kind of navigating those two things right now. But I recently started consulting with the Businesses for Conservation and Climate Action, which are working on Biden's 30 by 30, protecting 30% of the lands and 30% of the waters by 2030 initiative. And right now, you know, across Turtle Island, it's different in each state, but it's specifically very different from Alaska to the contiguous United States due to the privatization of land. And if we look at some of these spaces, you know, Jen, I think you were pointing specifically at ski resorts. And if we're thinking about, you know, being able to do like backcountry skiing and kind of the inequities between backcountry skiing and resort skiing and land ownership and these huge conglomerates, corporate conglomerates that are like able to buy up land to continue to perpetuate the system of resort skiing. It's like, how do we, you know, what I heard in your question or what I heard in your response was like, how do we come into a space of equity in that area? And I think we can be looking towards some of the propositions that are being put forward specifically around co-management of other lands, whether that is like Bureau of Land Management lands, or some states have co-management with tribes. There's a tribe that has a co-management relationship with for bison herding in the Midwest and around the plains. And so there's some of these like opportunities that are happening specifically around like resources with fish and with wildlife, animal relations that we can be looking towards. And maybe that's something like, if we're looking towards the outdoor industry, maybe that's something that we can put forward, is saying like, what would co-management look like between the resorts and whatever tribe it like has stewarded those lands in the past. And I think that that's really what I get excited about within the outdoor industry and within conversations like this, is being like, okay, we recognize that we live in a political system, and all of our recreation benefits from every single policy that's made in the city or out on the land or in the waters. And so how are each of us taking action with each other and within these coalition spaces to really be implementing and listening to tribes, listening to First Peoples, listening to BIPOC peoples, and then being able to say, hey, we want to call for this resort to be managed or, you know, co-managed by the tribe in the area, if that's something that they would like to participate in. And that, you know, that gets me really excited, because there are already joint ventures that happen in the national park system. So I used to be the cultural interpreter for Doyon Airmark, and Doyon is one of the native corporations up here in Alaska. And I won't get into all that, but Doyon, it functions as one of our tribal, or like one of our native entities up here, and they own 51% of the concession of Deenaalee National Park, meaning that the other 49% is owned by Aramark, which is a food and beverage industry out of Philadelphia, and then the regulations and everything is implemented by the National Park Service. And so it's a triangle of power. And so what would it look like to really, have more autonomy from Doyon's side, or from, whatever tribe would be stepping into something like that joint venture system, to have more ownership. So I think that's could potentially be one model for a form of land back. Now, co-management is not the ultimate answer. Self-determination and sovereignty is, but it is one step.
Yeah, I just wanted to go in real quick to, there's like so many levels of promoting awareness and things for land back. And, if you work in the tourism industry, or if you're on the hill, or if you're in the backcountry or something, like it's all, I think it's just really always good to sort of educate on the ground, everyone you're around all the time when you're skiing, or when you're in these avalanche courses or swiftwater courses, or if you're just hanging out in the parking lot talking to people. I just think it's the more we talk about it to the general public, I'm just constantly kind of amazed that folks haven't even heard of the term land back. So, expanding that awareness and that bubble like as often as you can is key.
Excellent. Well, I know that we are at time here, so thank you so much for hopping on, everybody. I want to go around and just say, maybe if there's like a sentence or two that everybody would like to give as your final thoughts, and then we can wrap up this session.
I'll go first, even though it's a lot of pressure. Always listen to your gut and the land and the mountains.
I work in education, so I think just being a co-learner, if you're in Washington and Oregon, you can always reach out to me. We're implementing curriculum in the schools. And so get ready, the kids are learning. So you should too, so co-learning.
I love that. The kids are learning. Yeah, my last words would be decolonization is for everyone. I think a lot of BIPOC talk about decolonization, but keeping in mind, no matter who you are, where you come from, decolonization is for you.
Yeah, I'll end with Indigenous futures benefit everyone, not just Indigenous people, kind of similar to what Micheli just said, but really important for non-Indigenous people to kind of marinate on that one and see how that holds true in your own life.
Man, this is so much pressure. I would just say, my big thing is making connections. So I just would encourage everyone, especially in this group, to reach out to the people that you see in this group and not be afraid to ask questions, and to learn from each other's experiences, talk about the land. Yeah, follow us on Instagram. We're always happy to chat more.
I don't know if I have any 2 cents, to hit off, but, I think that just having these open discussions, right, and having these safe places is the first step into finding solution, right? I think that we have quite a ways to go to find these safe places in the outdoor industry for people of color, for Indigenous people, for women. But, we are in action, and, we just got to keep that propulsion going. So yeah, thank you. Thank you all for being here. Really enjoyed it.
I really like the term "send it." but I think it's also important to send it in a good way and, just listen. Yeah, I just like everything everyone said, and it's really inspiring to see all your faces. It's 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I would have never, I just felt so alone. And it's been really awesome to be part of this. And yeah, send it in a good way. Decolonization, land back. Woo!
Wait, Micheli, do you?
What?
Sorry, I need to bring her
shared
coffee or something. Yeah, I guess like in closing, keep an eye on Department of Interior. There's going to be a lot of stuff rolling out when it comes to land management, especially in terms of land back, that is hopefully supported by this administration. And so, yeah, tune in with Department of Interior, DOI, and Auntie Deb Holland, that's leading the charge there. And then, if you want to continue to support the work of this coalition that you see here, part of our selection was to try to loop people in that we're going to be able to forward this scholarship and the desire to bring more people into the industry. And so we did end up, for transparency's sake, selecting folks that were a little bit more introduced into the backcountry field and had a little bit more experience, but it's because we see that as this growth opportunity to be bringing more people in, be bringing in beginners in, be able to host avalanche education in the future and really grow our capacity. So if you'd like to help us grow capacity, please consider supporting the next iteration of the Backcountry Fund, and reach out to the group here to see other ways that you can support. And Jen, I will hand the mic back to you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone so much for being here. Certainly an hour is not enough time, as we all know, but ideally we can continue this conversation. I will be speaking with some of the people here for a future episode of Juicy Bits, which is the podcast that Coalition Snow puts out. And so stay tuned for more there. And ideally this can be an annual event that we have. And the scholarship means a lot to me. It means a lot to Coalition. My relationship with Deenaalee and being able to work with them on this is incredibly important to me. And I hope that everybody values this as much as I have. And for everybody who joined to speak tonight, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and extending what is often a lot of emotional labor to help other people help white people in particular understand things that we can do to make the backcountry, make snow sports more inclusive for everyone. So thanks everyone for being here. You probably hear Atlas in the back eating his dinner, the dog. I've got a dog too here eating dinner. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. There'll be a recording that we put on our YouTube channel in the next couple days. We'll see you again in March, and please feel free to reach out to everybody in the clubhouse. And let's support this scholarship. So have a wonderful night, and thanks everyone.